Good afternoon. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, January 16, 2024. It is 3:32 p.m. My name is Ty Mentor, Chair of the Board. To my right is Vice Chair Commissioner Lynn. We also have Commissioner Carolina Mejia, Commissioner Gary Edwards, and Commissioner Emily Klaus, as well as Interim County Manager Robin Campbell. Purpose of today's hearing is a public hearing on a piece of CPA 16 Agriculture Code Update, which is part of Comprehensive Plan Docket Item CPA 16, titled Community Driven Review of Agricultural Policies and Programs. The purpose of this public hearing is to accept and consider public testimony on the proposed amendments to Agricultural Code Regulations in Title 20. This is a hybrid public hearing. Those wishing to testify have joined in person, by Zoom, emailed in comment, or mailed in comment. If you wish to testify, please visit the Thurston County homepage online and select Announcements of Public Hearings toward the bottom of the Meetings, Public Hearings, and Work Session Agendas page. The information to join this public hearing remotely has been posted there. If you do not wish to testify but would just simply like to listen and follow along, please watch the live stream through the Thurston County YouTube channel. Senior Planner Maya Teeple will provide background information on this topic. Public comment will begin with those in the boardroom, and then we will move to those on Zoom. Assuming you're on Zoom and you wish to testify, the Interim County Manager will read your name aloud. You'll have 4 minutes. Time may not be given to another person. When you are called on, please state your name and address for the record. Public hearing is now open. Maya Teeple will present background information on the proposal, and then we'll go to public testimony. Maya, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a PowerPoint to share. And so I will give a brief overview of the items being considered at tonight's public hearing. So thank you, County Commissioners. Maya Teeple, Senior Planner with Community Planning, here today for the public hearing we're holding on agricultural code amendments to the Thurston County Code. The purpose of today's public hearing is an opportunity to accept and consider public testimony on agriculture-related code amendments, specifically to our long-term agriculture zoning district and the agritourism overlay district. Following today's public hearing, the board does have the option to take an action on the ordinance and the code amendments, or they may delay action to any regularly scheduled meeting thereafter or request additional briefings. A little bit of background. This item is included on the 2022-2023 Official Comprehensive Plan docket, and it's part of item CPA-16, which is what we have been referring to as the Community-Driven Review of Agricultural Policies and Programs. That docket item specifically is a little bit of a larger project and does include several other amendments that are not part of today's public hearing. So today's public hearing is only on code amendments related to the long-term agriculture district and the agritourism overlay district. It does not consider any changes to the zoning maps or the land use maps, to policies within the comprehensive plan, to soils designations, or otherwise related to long-term agriculture, and those items will have a standalone hearing later in 2024. So we're still in the public review process for all of the maps and the soils and items related to that. This hearing today is only on the code amendments related to agriculture. A little bit of background about why we're separating the two items. So the code changes that are being considered at tonight's hearing have been widely supported by our agriculture community, and they improve agricultural viability, they improve flexibility for agricultural farmers who are located within long-term agriculture district, and they resolve some ongoing permitting challenges that we're running into in our permit center in our agritourism overlay district by clarifying regulations and making sure they are clear for not only our public but our permitting staff. The maps are being decoupled from this hearing, and like I said, they'll have their own hearing at a later date. A few reasons we're holding off on the maps and the soil considerations. The first reason is that there was some new data that was released late last year from the United States Department of Agriculture, so we need to redraft all of our maps And we only recently backfilled our GIS analyst position, so it'll take some time to familiarize with that mapping process because it's quite extensive. The second reason is once those maps are updated, we will re-engage and re-notify all of the affected landowners so that they can participate in the public process, and they'll be notified prior to any hearing on that. A little bit of background about our code changes. So the code changes that are being considered tonight affect several chapters within Title 20, and more specifically 20.03, which is the definitions chapter, 20.08A, which is the long-term agriculture zoning district regulations, 20.08G, which is the agritourism overlay district, and then 2054, which is the county's special uses permit chapter. The changes that are being considered include an expanded list of the types of uses that are allowed within the long-term agriculture zoning district, and those types of uses are pretty commonplace across other jurisdictions. They're mainly intended to improve agricultural viability and allow for additional flexibility to agricultural operators. The changes to 20.08G are related to the agritourism overlay district, and it's really a clarification of most of the standards that exist in that chapter so that it is clear to people who are applying for agritourism related permits and also our permitting staff. So just a map of those two areas and where these code amendments would apply. The patterned area is the current agritourism overlay district, and all of the AOD amendments would apply to that area. And then the lime green, which occurs in some areas of the agritourism overlay district, but not all areas, is our long-term agriculture zoning district. That's the current extent of it. And so amendments to that zoning district would apply in those areas. So the review of the code changes to date have had full legislative review with our Planning Commission and also our Board of County Commissioners. They've included stakeholder review with the Agriculture Advisory Committee, the Voluntary Stewardship Program Work Group, the Agritourism Committee, Olympia Master Builders, the Realtors Association, and other stakeholders. And the Planning Commission reviewed this over 6 work sessions along with the maps, so the code changes were part of that when it was at the Planning Commission stage. But at the August 2nd, 2023 Planning Commission meeting, they did recommend approval of the code changes. And the board has had 3 briefings in late 2023 on this item as well. So this hearing was noticed. Beginning on December 15th, we issued a legal notice and a press release and also a web mail to our interested parties. And to date, we've had, I'm sorry, this slide is not updated. As of today at 12 o'clock noon, when the comment period closed, we've had 5 public comments written to us. Just to recap the themes that we've heard in those comments, a few were questions and comments about the impacts of the land use and zoning changes, specifically the maps, which are not included as part of this hearing. We did receive 1 comment about several parallel planning efforts that are occurring in the Nisqually Valley and ensuring that the valley interests are fairly represented across all of those planning updates. 1 comment asking for clarification in several parts of the code, and that clarification was provided to that person. And then also noting that fee revisions should be considered for the open space tax program. That's kind of a separate ongoing conversation that's not part of these code amendments. And then finally, we received comments that are in support of the code changes. So as I mentioned, following the public hearing today, there are 2 options for the board. The first is to close the public hearing, and then for the board's consideration, you could take an action on the code amendments at this time or delay that to a future meeting. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Maya. Is there any questions from the board before we get going? See Commissioner Edwards and then Commissioner Mejia.
Maya, what was the vote at the Planning Commission?
I believe it was 5-2. We had 7 planning commissioners at that meeting, but that was an overall vote, including the vote on the maps.
Oh, okay, you did say that we could take an action on this. Based on just that action that you're saying we could take, what was the vote on that, on this portion that we're going to hear about tonight?
The Planning Commission was in support of the proposed code amendments, yes.
Yes, but what was the vote?
It was a 5-2 vote.
And two commissioners were missing?
2 commissioners were against, and primarily against the related map changes. They did not specify a specific reason for being against the code changes, but it was a vote against the package as a whole.
Commissioner Mejia.
Thank you. Maya, I would like to go back to the map that you showed in the PowerPoint, where you stated that those would be the areas that the code would affect. And when is this map from, or when were these areas chosen? Or this designation?
The Agritourism Overlay District, I believe, has been in place since 2012. Ashley, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And the Long-Term Agriculture District is current as of today. These are both current as of today. But the last updates we made to our Long-Term Agriculture Zoning District were, 2013 maybe, 2015.
Okay, let's go on to public comment.
When she says expand ag uses within the LTA, what does that mean?
Expanding ag uses. So as part of the code amendments to the long-term agriculture district, we reviewed other counties and what they are currently allowing. And the county, Thurston County, does not allow for currently certain types of uses that are agriculture related. So we would be expanding the list of uses to include agriculture related types of uses. Just to list some of those, it's like biosolid facilities related to agriculture and composting, ranches, stables, riding arenas. There are a number of others that Ashley could provide as an example, but mostly agriculture related uses that could occur on the property.
So today's consideration is not to change or expand anything within the LTA district. It's to expand allowances within the already zoned LTA areas and to streamline permitting within the agritourism overlay district.
That's correct. It's expanding the uses that would be allowed in the existing area.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to our sign up in the boardroom. And lots of folks checked no for testify. If you change your mind on that, just raise your hand. But first one that checked yes was John Pettit. And on deck would be Marcy Cleaver.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is John Pettit. I get involved with a lot of land use issues. And my concern, first of all, I want to point this out. At this meeting here, you have 2 new commissioners who were not involved previously in the entire process, or this, while you've already approved it. 2 new commissioners may have a change in the total program. So they need the opportunity to truly review it. Second part is, I don't know how many of you actually have a copy of what's being proposed right now in front of you. I don't know that any of you have a copy of it. Nobody here had a copy of it until after the meeting was already getting started. So there certainly are some questions as to whether or not it's fully understood what you're dealing with. My particular focus, I'm going to focus on, has to do with agritourism. Okay, that's only one portion of your code changes. I'm going to read to you, first of all, that there's a definition that's created by the state of Washington for agritourism. An agritourism activity means that carried out farm or ranch whose primary business activity is agriculture or ranching that allows members of the general public for recreational, entertainment, educational purposes to view or enjoy rural activities, including but not limited to farming, ranching, historic, cultural, and on-site educational programs, recreational farming programs that may include on-site hospitality services, guided and self-guided tours, petting zoos, farm festivals, corn mazes, harvest your own operations, hay rides, barn parties, horseback riding, fishing, and camping. Now, my first point I'm going to make here is that's the definition of agritourism. That's the state of Washington. We don't quite have the same definition in your code that you're going to be considering. Okay, it should align perfectly with the state. One of my concerns is, so you saw that map. Why doesn't that map cover all of Thurston County and all the parcels that would meet the criteria for being able to use agritourism as an overlay or a purpose for use of their property? Why didn't that happen? And you're making decisions based upon an area that you don't even actually know yet because you haven't got the new maps. How do you approve something when you don't even know who it's actually going to apply to? It's inappropriate and it should be delayed. My concern has to do with some conflict under attachment C. I'm sure you'll look it up if you happen to have a copy. But under attachment C, I see it as a conflict in how it's written. On what is page 16, you'll see where it says conflicts with other regulations. The first thing I want to tell you, though, is since I doubt any of you have experienced this issue, agritourism is not something you apply for or get permission from the county to do. There is no application or designation you are or you are not allowed to do agritourism. There's just a map. And then the fight starts as to whether you get to apply it or not. So under provision 015, conflicts with other regulations, on page 16, it says if AOD standard regulation conflicts with other specific development standards in Thurston County zoning code, rules and AOD rules and standards shall apply. Okay, let's go to the next page. I dropped off a copy. I hope you had a copy of it there in your office. But if you look under what they call their general AOD use standards, I'll be done in just a moment. Number 3, compliance with other standards. AOD uses shall comply with all other applicable county regulations, including not limited to health, land use, environmental, building, construction, and public works requirements and standards, as well as any applicable state and federal regulations. So one side says you have a use, and the other side says you still have to follow the 1 unit per 5 acre and every residential aspect that's already applied to each property. We need clarity, and we'd like to have an opportunity to actually have full clarity with definitions laid out here. Thank you.
Marcy Cleaver was next on the, yes, I wish to testify. Yes.
I'm Marcy Cleaver. I'm on the Board of Directors for the Community Farmland Trust. I want to thank the Board of Commissioners for agreeing, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, to even look at the concern the citizens of the community had in regards to the loss of farmland in Thurston County. And I'm glad to see that it's culminated today in some changes that are made to help farmers diversify their income on their land. That is very important. And I want to thank all the volunteers that showed up to do some of the hard work and lifting to get these changes made. It's important for farmers to be economically viable, because if they're not, they're going to sell their land, and chances are if they sell it, it's going to get developed. So by changing these rules, it opens up more avenues for income. And there's a lot of farmer wannabes out there that love going to farms for agritourism and other events, including weddings. Weddings on farms is a big thing. And I did read the changes. They were posted online. And so anyone could go there and actually read those changes if they chose to. So, thank you.
Thank you. Alex Nielsen did not check yes or no. I had to check. Okay, very good. Then I will go to Jeff Merriman.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Merriman. I was at the August 2nd Planning Commissioner meeting, and for the record, I had some testimony there, and a motion was brought by Mr. Day about cannabis and recognizing it as a checkbox item for agritourism. And there's been some confusion. It wasn't added to this. I've talked to Maya about it. She has her interpretation. I have my interpretation. But we haven't had a planning commissioner meeting to go back to Mr. Day and ask what his interpretation was, because it was brought up and they passed a motion to bring this forward to you guys with the understanding cannabis would be added. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I ask that you guys maybe push this off till after tomorrow, when somebody can ask Mr. Day about what his interpretation was when he made the motion that cannabis and cannabis hemp would be added into all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merriman. Next is Howard Glastetter.
Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Howard Glastetter. I'm a 53-year resident of the Nisqually Delta. Excuse me. I live at 11110, that's 11110 Coleman Road, southeast in Nisqually Valley. I'm here to give my view of the new ag rules and the impact on the Nisqually Valley Delta. I also submitted a 2-page written document. I won't have enough time to cover all the points I submitted, so I'll skim through it. So there are 3 kinds of people in the world: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who say, what happened? That's a truism of sorts. There's another saying: the business of a government is information. That's not always true. And why not? Because the final saying, theory is the same as practice. In practice, it isn't. So what has not been emphasized or barely publicized in the new Thurston County agricultural rules? Part of the Thurston County update is positioning the Nisqually Delta. I have a map here, and the commissioners have it. This is a map from the tribe. They're positioning the Nisqually Delta to be lean towards aquaculture rather than agriculture. And at least they're opening the door to it. There are other important issues that affect the Delta. Tacoma Power has no Federal Energy Regulatory Commission license for flood mitigation rules, and so the Delta suffers from floods from time to time. The I-5 rebuild is about to occur, and after the rebuild, the state is positioned to remove the underfill and the old Highway 99, which will allow floodwaters or high waters to come in from the Delta. The map that you have in front of you, if you look at the upper left-hand corner where Puget Sound touches the Delta, you'll notice that if you go over to the right, at the very top of the page, it says Salmon Habitat Restoration and Protective Initiative Area. If you look real hard, you'll see a little I-5 notation, and that's where I-5 runs. It doesn't run at the bottom of the Delta. It runs right through the middle of what is the true delta. So the Nisqually tribe wants the delta to be reserved for salmon enhancement, which of course it's used that way now. Is there going to be a study of all the options that are expected that haven't been discussed publicly? Will there be compensation for any property takes? The large delta, just a thought, looking backwards in history, about the same time the Nisqually sub-area plan was built, the developers or landowners sold their development rights 30 years ago to preserve the rural character of the delta. Is the property take fair after the sacrifice? Is my time up?
I think so. So you just,
Sorry. Okay.
we have your written comment, and just if you wanted to make a final wrap up.
Okay. Oh, all right. So I've just received a notice that the sub-area plan will be updated. In the mail, I received that notice. A week from now, it will be discussed with people who live in the valley. This is the first time, it's the 1992 plan, it's the first time in over 30 years that it's going to be reconsidered. Even though it's the first time, it was so well written that the valley has been preserved. So give the sub-area a chance. Otherwise, there may be a lot of citizens saying, what happened?
Thanks, sir. Johanna's up. Okay. Next is Greg Schumbuckler. Grab a mic for you.
Can you hear me okay? I can kind of shout into the mic.
We can get you a mic.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks. Hi, commissioners. Thanks for having this hearing today. So I'm Greg Schumbuckler, and in South County, and I serve on the Thurston County Agriculture Thurston County Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and also the Thurston County Agricultural Advisory Committee. But I'm here today as a private landowner in Thurston County, an agricultural landowner. So we have a commercial operation in South County, Rainier Tenino area. It's nearly 1,200 acres. We have a portion of that in long-term ag, and another portion in zone 1 to 5, triple R 1 to 5. All of it falls within the ag overlay. And so, you know, these things that are in this code amendment are not things that we deal with on a regular basis. But for those of you that know me, I believe that, you know, sustainability of agriculture comes with the landowner's ability to have some versatility in how they use the land. And for us, we've been successful in sustaining our property through alternative uses. We built a commercial compost facility years ago, and I haven't been shy about the fact that if we didn't do that, we would have developed it years ago. It would have gone to 5-acre tracts many years ago if we weren't able to diversify our uses. So that's been our method of sustainability, and I think that largely this plan or these amendments are pointed in that direction. And I think it's, you know, largely positive. I think that the more flexibility and the easier you can make it for landowners to be able to diversify, the better tools they have access to sustain the open space and agricultural operations and whatnot. So, you know, largely I'm in favor of this. I think there are a few conflicting things within the code. You know, I don't really want to get in the weeds and all of that. But I think, you know, largely Maya and Ashley have done a great job of capturing how to build flexibility into agricultural properties. So that's all I want to say. I don't want to kind of dive into the details of this. They're not that important to me, but I know others are. The one thing I would say is that I find it maybe a little bit of a problem that there's LTA lands that do not fall under some of these benefits, and I think those folks, now we're not one of them, so I shouldn't complain because it would give me an advantage to those others out there. But I think that if I had LTA land that didn't fall within this area, and these areas are granted, some looser regulations and some more expanded uses, I think I'd be kind of upset that I had land that had great limitations put upon it without my former earlier desire in the 90s when that happened, and I don't get the same flexibility as other lands that don't have those same limitations have. So that would be my biggest comment, would be that and those folks that have those lands outside of the AOD that are LTA, I think they should have an opportunity to jump in on this, one way or another. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
That's great. Okay, before I go to Zoom, is there anyone else in the boardroom? Okay, yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Mitch Lewis. Together with my wife, we're co-owners of Summit Farms right across from Miller, Sylvania, 11815 Whitehall Lane. We happen to be in the AOD, and I'm also head of the Agritourism Advisory Committee. So it's very nice to see you. Just a couple of things I wanted to say is we're very much in favor of the clarifications that we've read so far in the 2008G. There's still a little bit of work to do there. Also, we are newbie, late in life farmers. We chose Olympia and Thurston County. We've been here about 3 years. And we wanted to say also that we've been really pleased with the support we've had from the county, like the Conservation District, the EDC. And we feel very strongly about the economic multiplier effects of the AOD. And one of the suggestions that I'd like to make is that perhaps there could be some better data gathering and metrics that aren't captured in LTAC and some of the taxes that we pay. So I think a lot of the folks that stay here, and we're farmers first, but we're also trying to make our land survive, as Marcy said. But is there some ways for us to track the visitors that come visit us on our farms and ranches? They're spending money in restaurants and kids' places, and I think there's some further benefits that really support both the tax base and those of us here. So again, and I also wanted to put a shout out to Ashley, who actually visited us on the farm and could see what it's like for some of us in the AOD. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Scott.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Scott Nelson. And first, to clarify, as one of the planning commissioners who voted no on this, my vote was against the designation and mapping, not the code changes. So with that said, it's been a while since I looked at this, so I'm not going to get into any specifics, but I hope you guys look at this as a first step. I have been involved in county land use since 2005. And I don't think I've ever made it any secret that I don't think that Thurston County has been very friendly to farmers. And that is part of the reason I voted against the mapping. We need to look at not how do we take stuff from farmers to say that we're protecting farmland. How do we encourage people to farm? How do we make them feel like they can do stuff in Thurston County, feel like there's a way forward that they can change stuff? One of the problems that you run into in Thurston County a lot, I think, is the development fees. When Thurston County went to their new fee schedule, Thurston County was actually charging more per hour to apply for a fee, for a permit, than King County was charging at the time. Now, I don't know where that number has gone, but I don't see how Thurston County's variable costs could be higher than King County's. Fixed cost, you know, if you want to throw in other things, maybe, but some of those things you can't include. So I would also say that these changes that have been brought forth to the code, I thank Maya and Emily and Ashley, because they're the ones that brought them for this. And I think that's something we need to look at going forward with our comprehensive review of agriculture, is let's let people, and people, especially people that are involved in agriculture, let's give them time and go through this and see what changes are there that need to be made. What can we do that maybe will improve stuff? And I think, like the agritourism overlay, I think maybe include a review so that on a regular basis, we go through and look and see, is this working? Because I think if you go out, yes, there are people that are taking advantage of agritourism overlay district, but I think as a whole on the county, it's not working. Just like I think as a whole in the county, long-term agriculture is not working to protect farmland. And if you go through and look, I've said this for years, if you look at the code, there's no advantage to me being in long-term ag as opposed to RR 1 to 5. And actually it was brought up to me recently by Ashley. There's actually places where it would be better for me to be in RR 1 to 5 than long-term ag as a farmer. And I think that speaks volume as to the mistakes that Thurston County has made in the last 30 years zoning long-term ag. I would also ask that you put pressure on the cities to create receiving areas for transferable development rights. This is a program that's been in since 1995, and I believe there's been 30-some development rights sold, but none of them have been actually put to use in any of the cities. And until we find a market where developers are willing to buy these development rights because they can use them in the cities, it's going to be hard to allow farmers to take advantage of this. Thank you.
Scott, could I ask a question?
Yep.
When you said that some farmers would be better off in RR 1 to 5 than long-term ag, and better off in what sense?
In the sense that there are things in code that are allowed in the RR 1 to 5 that are
More
ag-related
uses.
that are not allowed in long-term ag.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Have I now captured everyone in the boardroom that wanted to give testimony? Looks like yes, so I'll go to Phyllis Farrell, you're up in the upper right. Did you want to provide testimony?
No, thank you. I'm here just to observe. Thank you.
Okay, and then is it Connie Riker? Can't see that.
Connie Riker, yeah.
Okay, did you like to provide testimony? Would you like to?
Yes, actually, I would.
Very good. You're up.
Thank you. Are you ready for me to go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Connie Riker. I live at 9801 James Road Southwest. That's in Rochester, Washington. I have lived here for over 20 years and have operated a horse farm and a lesson program at my farm, which recently has partnered 7 years ago with a nonprofit organization where we provide or benefit working with at-risk youth in order to teach life skills using horses. I have a newly moved in neighbor who is quite frustrated and angry about the operation of my farm, and I am zoned in a long-term agricultural zoning area, which would be a challenge under the best of circumstances to have someone who lives quite close to you who is very frustrated about your ag use of your own property. The inconsistencies and challenges of the current code have caused and aggravated the challenges that we had in dealing with the situation. And so I'm quite pleased when I go through and read some of these proposals that were made in the code, and I'm hoping that this clarification will make a huge difference and is a great start to offering flexibility, and it makes it easier to operate your agricultural business. And the consistencies will really make our lives quite better as far as the interaction and the understanding and clarification that is needed in order for us to continue to operate. We've been frustrated and challenged for the last 15 months as a result of the difficulties of lack of understanding and clarity in the current code. So I am hopeful that the commissioners will realize that this is a great start for farmers in Thurston County, and recognizing that nothing is perfect. You really can't anticipate every challenge, and you can't anticipate that you're going to be able to do everything that you want to do in one step, but it is an excellent step towards what it is that's needed for farming. So I'm hopeful that you'll choose to vote to approve these changes today so that they can go into effect immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riker. Next, I have Peggy Smith.
I am just observing, thank you.
Okay, thank you for being here. That is the end of Zoom, and it's the end of the sign-up list. Is there any, let's see, what's next? Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards. Discussion, I
I
believe.
guess, can we put Ashley on the spot?
I think we can. Go ahead, Ashley.
I believe Marcy Cleaver mentioned weddings would now be available under these changes. What does that entail? You get to have 2 a year, 12 a year?
Yeah, so the Agritourism Overlay District had provisions for event facilities that would accommodate weddings. Some of those regulations were just clarified, but not substantially changed.
And so when she says that they're beneficial to the ag activities, how, I mean, if I can see if you put one on every week, that could be an income. But if you only do it twice a year or something, maybe it's more of a headache. So what's the rule?
It'll take me a second to look up exactly what the provisions are, but they are laid out in terms of how many you're allowed to have per year and the span of time in between those, trying to balance the desire to diversify income base with, you know, having neighbors that might not necessarily want an event going on every weekend. So there's a balance there, but it is currently an allowed use, and so the proposed changes just try to clarify what those regulations are.
Yes. Are they adequate? I guess that's, but I don't know what's adequate. So I guess I do need a number from you.
Yeah. Well,
at some point, but I don't want to tie you up right now.
I will say that was a topic of conversation with the Agritourism Overlay District, or Agritourism Committee, as well as the Agriculture Advisory Committee. So that was something that was reviewed by both committees, and recommendations were made.
I guess my concern is oftentimes something becomes worthwhile if you can do enough of it. If you can build so many widgets, maybe it's worth it. If you can only build 2 a year, maybe it's not. So I'd like to know a little more about that.
I think it's page 18.
Page 8, thank you.
What was that,
Maya,
Rob?
if you have
Page
it,
18, section 10.
Maya, hold on.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know if we, okay.
Maya may know the answer.
Yeah.
I'm happy to read that. I have it pulled up in front of me. So for short-term agritourism events, including weddings, it's allowed for up to 21 days per year and limited to 3 consecutive days per event, with a minimum of 7 days between events unless there's approval from the director.
And what was it, I guess? What was the change? What did it go from to 21? Did it go from 10 to 21 or?
I'm going to refer to Maya on that one since
And I don't think I need it right now because I'm going to opt that we don't make the decision right now. I think we can do follow-up. But anyway, let's see where we go.
Okay. point of discussion for the board today? Commissioner Edwards, you had a suggestion to delay any decision on the code.
Well, yes, there's,
I'm in favor of that. I wrote down 3 or 4 questions that I want to answer.
yeah, well, I think it's always worth getting all the answers so we don't have, well, I'm not sure about this or that. Because we had people that had questions. I mean, one issue was it sounded like there was gonna be something added in on the hemp business or whatever, and maybe it did not get added in. So I'd like to find out a little more of that. There was one issue on that, and Mr. Day made a motion was the statement, and Mr. Day is,
Planning Commissioner.
Planning Commissioner, and we can clarify that at least in terms of the research that we've done.
okay, well, I don't think we need to do it right now.
Okay.
But, okay, and then some of the others that are in favor,
Why not?
sounds like they're in favor of it.
We can.
We're very much, recognize that, well, maybe it wasn't perfect, but it's pretty good. Well, maybe we can make it just a little bit better if we kick it around a little more.
Motion to move it to the next meeting.
Okay, Commissioner Mejia?
I would ask commissioners to ask questions of staff now so they have a chance to prepare for these questions at our next hearing. That's just a recommendation, just so both Ashley and Maya have a chance to either look for the answers and we're not having to schedule another session just because
Okay.
research needs to go into it or.
So whenever you're ready.
I'm going to ask the interim county manager if the board, sounds like the board is going to need to act on a later time with a follow-up discussion. Is there a proposed time for that discussion? Or is that
We
TBD?
don't have a proposed time for that, but we can certainly get it on your calendar. We'd need to go back and figure out when that would be. There was a proposal that you adopt this at the hearing this afternoon, but if you choose to delay, that's fine. We'll set up the work session.
The 3 questions that I had, following up on Commissioner Mejia's, one was Mr. Pettit's question about he had 2. One about the conflict of the agriculture overlay district, agritourism overlay district in the code. And second, is there a logic to waiting for the mapping to be finished before the code change? Is it putting the cart before the horse if we don't know where the code changes are going to apply based on new mapping? That's number 1. Second was the cannabis issue that Commissioner Edwards raised. And third, for me, was Mr. Schoenbuckler's proposal to put, why isn't all long-term ag and agritourism overlay district, and is that something we could do? That might be a future action, but I'm curious about that. Those were mine.
My question was, what are the uses that are allowed in the RR1 that are not allowed in the LTA?
So the proposal before you was trying to reconcile that. So a review of RR15 was done, and that was something we shared with the Planning Commission. We compared the agricultural uses allowed in the RR15 to what we have in long-term ag today.
So this rectifies that
Mr.
discrepancy
Yeah.
that Mr. Nelson? Okay.
And we can actually answer a lot of these today. It's up to you.
Well,
There hasn't been a question that's been raised.
I'm not
that
gonna
we
be,
can't.
I'm not gonna be ready to vote on this today because we've got issues. And, I don't think we're gonna stay here for a long period of time tonight, are we? I mean, we need to have a little more time, and I didn't, because even now, I didn't make note of all my questions so I could rattle them off to you. Commissioner Mejia had a heck of a good idea, but she got ahead of me. So, I mean, I could, Ms. Reichter said this was a big improvement. Well, I'd like to know over what and how, a lot of those kind of things. So I think it isn't just a simple dot the I and cross the T. So I know that one of my concerns came from Mr. Glassetter on how that affects that whole area down there where their future ag Aqua Ag, I think is what it's called, and how that fits, because if you look at the map that he's provided, there's certain areas that already are adjusted, and that was the rights that were bought up, I think in the 90s. But there's a lot of the residential area that, according to the legend, looks like that's intended to be flooded out. That's all residential area. So I've got questions about that as well, and we've got a gravel operation going on down there as well. So there's just more going on than I think I'm willing to vote for right now. So that's where I'm at.
Ashley, are there questions that you've heard that you want to give answers to while we're here? There's a lot of people here that might want to hear them.
Yeah, in terms of, well, it's really, it's up to you. I mean, we can sort of rattle some of these off, but
Would you know the long-term plan of, say, the tribal plan that?
no, it was outside the scope of this proposal, and there are actually no changes being proposed to the Nisqually Agriculture Zoning District. It actually is its own separate zoning district, and we're only proposing changes to long-term ag as well as agritourism overlay. Now, it was mentioned that there is an open house next week to really kick off the Nisqually sub-area plan update, and that'll be a great opportunity to really dive into some of those issues.
So this has nothing to do with that area?
No.
Absolutely
Well,
nothing to do.
there's agritourism, and all the concerns that were referenced are not ones that, you know, were within the scope.
Thank you.
I guess I'm gonna, so we don't open the hearing back up, does the board, can we kind of agree? I mean, I can see Ashley saying that there's nothing to do with, that's the answer, but Mr. Glassitter, I don't think he agrees with that, so, and he lives there, so, and he's been watching it for the last 50 years, so I'd like to wait, and maybe we could even hear from this other hearing.
Commissioner Mejia?
Ashley, I guess my question, a lot of my questions were covered, that I am also interested in the answers, but I guess one of the things that I heard a couple of times from public comment was, this is a good first step. And, you know, the document is great, but not perfect, right? And so, you know, I guess in the grand scheme of things, right, we would love for it to be perfect, knowing that there are situations that, of course, that we just don't know about. And so, if we're to move forward with this, I just kind of want to know, like, is this going to be like a living document, or like how do these changes, right? Like, if there are things that come up later, like how are we going to be able to adapt with new things that come along, that way we're not impeding, you know, farmers from growing their business or.
Yeah, I mean, so this work was really kicked off by our stakeholder work group that we had, you know, late 2022, looking at zoning, and they really started digging into the list of uses. So it really focused on the list of uses and trying to provide flexibility for farmers and allow for that diversification. For example, in terms of it being a living document, it really didn't dive into things relating to housing or residential uses in long-term ag, because we knew that was going to be part of the comprehensive plan update. And so rather than just touch housing and long-term ag and not touch it in all the other zones, it seemed to make more sense to look at it more holistically. So yes, it's a living document. There are definitely pieces that are not covered in this update. It was more limited in scope to look at that list of uses and focus on long-term agricultural viability from an economic standpoint. And so you'll probably see changes within the next year or two that are focused on the housing piece or other pieces that come up through the comprehensive plan update.
Commissioner Edwards?
As we move forward, and everybody agrees that this is an improvement, but it's not quite there yet. So what does that mean? That we can make incremental changes as we see they need to be made, or do we have to wait for this long, you know, this is a 30-year process since last time, it sounds like. So would we be able to make those incremental changes to better the document without a bunch of delays and red tape and bureaucratic process. I guess that's what my concern would be.
That would be at the board's will if they want to docket additional changes.
Well, when
So-
you say docket, that usually we only get to do things once a year on a docket or something, and so.
Under CPA 16, there is more work to be done. So some of the ideas that were mentioned here, like updating the transfer development rights, that lives in a completely different section of the code. It's still docketed though as a project that we're going to be working on. Cannabis also exists in a completely different section of the code, and so our interpretation and watching the planning commission meetings and the discussion on that is they are recommending the board docket that as a separate item because it wasn't part of our current scope. So there are a lot of things that are tangentially related to agriculture, but might not fall in this particular chapter.
I'm good to go for now.
Okay.
And then just one last thing with the mapping. As Maya pointed out with the map, we have 15,500 acres in long-term ag zoning today. And there's a lot of additional acreage that is covered with the agritourism overlay district. And the reason that we thought to separate out the mapping piece and this code piece was really to benefit those landowners that currently have this zoning. And then the board has, the option later this year to think about expanding that zoning, and that these provisions would then apply to those expanded zoning areas.
Is there any commissioner that feels that they would like to make a motion on this code change or move forward today? Okay, so let's have a motion to close the public hearing, and then we can set a date for further discussion. Is there such a motion?
I move to close this public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to close public hearing. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, any opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is closed. And so we're not going to take any action, and I'm going to look to the interim county manager for a proposed date for further follow-up.
So your next available work session is on January 25th at 2 p.m.
I have a question about that.
Yes, sir.
Somebody said something about a hearing coming up on something else within a week or 10 days or something.
A hearing coming up on something else.
So I think we need to go a little farther out so that some of this stuff maybe can happen, whether it's the planning commission.
That was the Nisqually sub-area plan.
Oh, this Nisqually
Open
suburb.
house.
Okay. I don't know what the rush is. We've been waiting 30 years. Let's not rush into this. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So I'm not proposing that you rush. However, this was separated in part at the request of some of your citizens to move the code forward. So are you not wanting a work session on January 25th?
I'm not particularly, because I'd like to hear some of this other information that's gonna come out within the next week or so. But from my concern, I do know citizens are concerned about this, but I think they want us to do it right. And so
Absolutely, I agree.
the closer we can do it, get it to being right,
So-
I think is better.
January 25th is more than 1 week out, and you would have the additional information within the next week?
Are we up against a time frame that we need to get this done within the next 2 weeks, 30 days?
How long
whatever?
would you like to
Well,
drag it out?
I don't have a time frame. I just want to get it right. And I want to make sure that we have adequate discussion to get it right.
Is there any concern from the board about a work session where we need not take any action on January 25th at 2 p.m.?
No.
Okay, then we're going to go with that. And if we're not ready to go at that time, we'll ask for more time,
We
because
will
we'll
not be asking you to
further
make a
clarify.
decision on that date. That will be further information.
We'll further clarify what needs to be followed up on if we're not quite there. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.